So I just finished watching an early premiere of The Tomorrow War. This is a film starring Chris Pratt, which debuts tomorrow on Amazon Prime. So it's an Amazon original film that clocks in at about the 2 hour and 20 minute mark. It is about a group of soldiers who come to our present day and basically let humanity know that they are fighting a war that they are going to lose in the upcoming weeks. So they start recruiting people from the present, and eventually Chris Pratt gets conscripted or drafted into this war. So he goes into the future to figure out what alien race that humans are fighting and basically devise a plan to beat them and make certain that humanity can survive. So without further ado, I'm going to get into my review for this. So as I said, Chris Pratt plays an ex-military member who's trying to branch into the field of science. He feels like he can have a great career, and it's something that he really wants to focus on to get himself away from the military, but he's having trouble finding jobs, and pretty much he has moved to a new location with his ex-wife and his daughter to basically start a life and make certain that they can provide for her. But of course, in the opening 15 minutes is when the humans from the future come and let the present day humans know that they're going to be drafted. And of course, the first people to go are military, but when not even a handful of them come back after only spending 7 days in this future war, they start having to look towards just drafting random civilians. And definitely too, it was one thing that kind of shocked me a little bit. I'm surprised I didn't go into a little more earlier in the film, is they are unwillingly just basically taking people, drafting them and sending them to war basically as cannon fodder, where they don't even get military equipment. They're going in the clothes that they were drafted or conscripted in basically, and given minimal training, hardly any training. But the bonus is if they die, that their family will receive $1 million payments for their work and their sacrifice, which isn't a lot in the long run, really. And it's to just kind of surprised me that they didn't show. It's absolutely brutal and terrible how these people are conscripted. I'm surprised that they didn't show riots, because there would absolutely be riots and civil wars if anything like this was put, I would think, anywhere in the world, because of how terrible the draft is. And I wish they would have went into the politics and the socioeconomics, things like that, of what this conscription really meant for humans, especially too, since they kept sending thousands of people every single week. So it seemed like thousands of people from a state every single week, to hardly have anyone come back, no one at all, some of the missions. And I just really wish they would have dove into that a little bit more. There's one thing too where at the beginning of the movie, when of course Chris Pratt and the comrades that he gets conscripted with get sent to the future, I was so surprised that, like, how come they don't have better weapons? Because when you see these creatures, who I do have to say are really uniquely designed, I thought they're menacing, terrifying, like they were very scary. And you find out pretty early on too that they basically shoot these spikes into people, and if it's, they never quite explain if this is how it works, but throughout the film you kind of see that this is how it goes. If you get hit by one of these spikes and die while it's still like impacted in you, or I guess if it stays long enough, you will turn into one of these creatures. And that's how they're almost fighting a war that's so impossible, because if one human dies, they get another one of their species to fight. So it almost seems like the opposite of like the Hydra spectrum, where one of you dies, all of a sudden they're even stronger and have more numbers than you, and they're just constantly outnumbered no matter how many humans they're sending to the war. But no, I did really enjoy the creature design, and you find out that the weapons that the humans are given, hardly, people are shooting full clips into these aliens, and it's barely scratching off their armor in certain cases. And like they do eventually are able to find weak points in them and find ways to kill them in some pretty unique and, like I said, just cool ways. But what was going through my head at first is like, how come they weren't given better weapons if they're so far in the future? But you find out too that in the future there's less than 5,000 humans left, and there's all the issues of attrition, and they're constantly on the run because, like I said, they're sending people from the past in, and they've already lost billions of people. So there's billions of these creatures roaming around. So when they talked about the attrition, the limited resources, limited time, and just limited people to get everything done, and advanced technology, it made a lot of sense to me and kind of cleared that skepticism up in my head. They did a good job covering a few of some of the potential plot holes in this movie, but there still are a ton of them kind of lingering throughout the movie that are pretty easy to catch on to. Like the script and the pacing of this movie, the pacing is pretty decent. It moves pretty quick in the first bits, but then it slows it down and it starts to become a little more flushed out. And like I said, most of the plot holes are covered up pretty well for the most part, but it is a very straightforward movie. You don't really miss much when you watch it. And I do kind of think that adds to this kind of just being a one-off movie to watch, have fun with, but it's nothing that I can see myself watching again. Just kind of like a one and done movie, I felt, a lot for me, and some of the straightforwardness of it was pretty nice. Like I said, it's just very easy to get into, easy to understand what's going on, and like I said, just some of these things that I thought could have been potential plot holes were covered up pretty decently. The writing in this is, like I said, pretty well done. There are some very corny jokes that are thrown in that Chris Pratt or any of the supporting cast has to offer. But Chris Pratt does do a pretty decent job just kind of being not so much of a stoic hero, but just kind of, he's nothing like Star-Lord or whatnot, or his character from the Jurassic World series, where they... You can tell he was trying to play around being joking and also too just being an absolute badass of a character, and he found decent ground with it, but it's easily not one of his best performances, but I did think it was decent and solid enough to be. Of course, this movie is very Chris Pratt centered, so a lot of the supporting cast, even though the characters are cool, they have some of their like good moments to shine, you won't get attached to them at all because it doesn't give you enough of them to really truly care about them, learn about them, do these things, and not all of them needed to be there exactly, but still, some of the fleshing out of the side characters I think could have benefited this movie a little more, kind of raise the stakes and kind of how you're feeling about them too. I will say though that there is one opening shot when they first send the humans into the moral war or the future, that just what happens during it, I'm trying to avoid it for spoiler's sake, but it's absolutely devastating and you feel absolutely horrible and terrible. But again, that's kind of one of the things that I wish they would have addressed a little later on in the movie, and I thought that they were going to get stuck in the future because of what happened in the beginning. But yeah, just kind of little plot holes here and there that you'll find in the movie that could take it away. Yeah, like I said, it's scripted decently enough, it's acted well enough, it is pretty entertaining. The direction seems a little wonky at some parts of the movie, but when it gets down to the action, I thought it was really well filmed. Some great wide shots. It can get very gory and brutal on both sides of either the aliens dying or humans dying. I think there are some very gruesome kills. Humans get bit in half. Helicopters basically like turn their blades and shred the hell out of a ton of these aliens, and it can be pretty awesome in certain cases, or just people taking ridiculous fall damage from certain things. Like I said, the action in this is pretty well done. I thought it was awesome. It got me excited for most of it. Some of the kills were like, you're laughing, you're like, oh, that was awesome, like little things like that. It was a pretty entertaining movie, and like I wanted to know how it was going to unfold, how it was going to go, and some of it was pretty predictable. But like I said, I was still entertained for the first bit of this movie, and that just kind of carried over in little pockets here and there as the movie was going on. And like I said, it was fun enough for me to just keep going at it, and said overall did like this film. I will admit though, this movie, kind of when there's half an hour left, I 100% thought the movie was over, done with, and it was going to go one way, and it definitely fakes you out and takes you to another ending that I was just wondering what in the world they were going to do. Like, was it going to be effective as the way I thought this movie was going to end? And like, I didn't really have faith in it at first, but when the movie kind of finished its climax, you knew what they were doing in the last half an hour in the movie. They did a really good job kind of filming it, acting it out, flushing out the ending too quite a bit, and made for a really entertaining action sequence that I thought was pretty awesome. It's a really good moment shared between J.K. Simmons' character, who is Chris Pratt's character's father in this. And yeah, it was just kind of an epic ending that I didn't see coming. I didn't think it was going to be necessary, but I did really like it. I do think in my mind that it still would have been as effective the way that I thought this movie was going to end, which I'm certain a lot of people will share the same thing. I'm trying to avoid spoiler's sake, but it wasn't going to be necessary, but I did quite like it. And even though they were both as effective as one another, either one would have been fine for me, but I am glad that they took a bit of a risk and it paid off for me. But yeah, with all this taken together, this movie I think did have a lot more potential. It could have been flushed out a lot more in certain cases. I did really enjoy the creature design. The concept was cool, even though the title seems a little bit lazy in terms of just the Tomorrow War. I did quite enjoy this film, and that is why I'm going to give it a score out of 6 out of 10. And of course, if you've seen the Tomorrow War, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below, and just what your favorite part of it was. Anything you want to talk about, leave it in the comments down below. And of course, if you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up and check out all my other movie reviews and everything that I do on this channel through my playlist down below, and I'll link some up top here as well. And of course, if you like what you see on the channel, subscribe, turn the little ringer on if you want to know when I upload new videos. In my description, there's a link to my Twitch, which is where I do everything video games wise, and there's also a link down there to the Media Mountain, which is my Discord, where we talk about everything that's awesome in this world, from movies, video games, TV, music, you name it. But that is an amazing community if you want to help make it even more amazing than it is already. Like I said, the link's in the description, you can join that, and yeah, definitely check out the Tomorrow War on Amazon Prime, and awesome, guys.